Hi, and welcome back to Dirty Bernie's Garage. Today we're going to be doing up part 2 of this 1982 Murray I was working on. I noticed in the first video I had a couple of mess ups. For starters, I actually listed it as a 1882 Murray in the title. Unfortunately, I don't think Murray was around in 1882. Nor do I think that there was gas-powered lawnmowers around in 1882. But if you do have an 1882 Murray that doesn't run and you need it fixed, send it over. I'll fix it for free just so I can tinker with it, because I'd love to see one. But anyway, another thing I noticed that I messed up was the valve clearance, the settings on the valves. Just to be correct, on your intake valve it's going to be 5 to 7 thousandths, and your exhaust valve is going to be 7 to 9 thousandths. So what I did on that, when I did the initial settings, the intake is actually set to the max of 7 thousandths, and the exhaust is actually set to the max of 9 thousandths. So that way it's easier to, it'll take longer for them to actually wear again. Now, that doesn't happen over a course of a day or two. It's probably 15-20 years it takes for that valve to stretch enough to the point that where this engine was, way out of spec like it was. So, that being said, I'm going to show you what's going on here with the rest of this before I start zapping this thing back together. I still got a ways to go on it, but I'm going to get you filled in on where we're at right now, and I'm going to be doing a few upgrades to this thing as we go along. So I'm going to show you that real quick. All right, so this is the original cylinder head for this engine. You want to notice your combustion chamber here. Yeah, tip over. It's a pretty good sized thing. This head's all carboned up and everything, which that's no biggie. That could easily be cleaned up. But what I'm going to be doing, we're going to put the new style head on it. You want to notice this combustion chamber is very small compared. This is only theory on my part. I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert on flow or anything, because I'm not. I just think that this head actually flows better just because of the fact it's smaller and everything is, once it's actually cleaned up better, you want your combustion to happen right here over the top of the piston. But this thing here, I think it's going to actually push it through a little quicker and everything. Like I said, theory on my part. I put this newer style head on several engines over the years. They always run better, but at the same time, I'm always doing valve jobs and everything before it goes on. So I can't, confirm or deny that that's the actual truth. I don't have access to or own a dyno to prove any of this, so like I said, it's just theory. You have any comments on this? I'd love to hear them. So anyway, I'm gonna clean this head up a little more, and this is the new head that's gonna be going on that engine. Now, another thing I wanted to show real quick. This is the engine that I had. I had it up for a comparison to show you some of the differences. You're gonna notice these valves are dished. Both of them are. Now, that came out in approximately somewhere in the 90s with that smaller chamber head. The chamber is smaller, but these valves are dished. Now, this engine didn't seem to be running all that bad. But I have seen these engines like this where the valves are actually, this dish is full of carbon. Of course, that's a running condition of the engine as well, so you can't really say much about that, but I prefer, as the older engine has the actual flathead valves. So I like I said, I think that valve setup with that smaller chamber head, it seems to be a winner to me. Again, if if you got something to say about it, let me know, because I'm always welcome to comments. This is the original head gasket for this engine. I got to clean it up some. You can actually reuse these head gaskets. I'm sure it's not recommended by everybody, but I've only done a couple million of them, never had a problem with it. And also, this is a head gasket off this newer engine. As you can see, it leaves chunks on a block. They made it to the point where you cannot reuse it. And that's fine. I can understand that. They want you to buy parts and everything. But anyway, for right now, I'm going to go ahead and I got to get that cylinder head and this gasket cleaned up, and we're going to go ahead and put everything back together. So we'll be back in a minute. All right, so we got this starter all apart here. Figured I'd give you a quick close-up of how this thing works. It's called a ball and cam starter. This thing came out in the 50s and actually ran until around 2000, and they switched up to the cup style starter, which I'll probably cover that in a different video. But anyway, I'm gonna give you I gotta zap this thing back together, and I'm gonna give you a quick idea how it works. Anyway, you got your crankshaft here. I took a piece of emery and polished it up a little bit. Down here is it's what your pull starter attaches to. Now, this is meant to, this piece here actually spins on the shaft. Sometimes they go dry. If you ever started an older lawnmower, especially Briggs & Stratton, and it's made an ear-piercing screeching noise, this is your culprit right here. The crank's got to be smooth. This piece here, I'm told that it had some type of a coating on it from the factory. I don't know whether or not that's true, but what I do on these, when I take them apart like this, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little 3-in-1 oil in it. Put some on the crankshaft too. Maybe. I guess that idea didn't work. But yeah, see this one. There we go. All right, so how this whole thing works, you got a bunch of ball bearings, which I'm going to go ahead and set them back in place. They go in all these little notches here. And all right, so this is how this setup works. Now your pull starter is going to be, when you slide it on, it slides right onto this square piece, and this will stay stationary while the engine's running. Now remember, this engine turns clockwise, so but during your starting, it's going to lock one or more of the balls to the point where it kind of jams it up. That's so you're able to pull start it. Then when the engine starts spinning, you can picture the engine spinning instead of this piece, but when the engine spins, all these balls are actually going to go up inside of these little things. It's just centrifugal force actually pushing them in there. Like I said, these do wear out over time and everything. What I normally do on these older mowers, like this one here, next year if I take it apart or whatever, all I will do is actually drop a little bit of oil right here. There's a little hole, and it will go in there and cover the crankshaft. Now, one thing you never want to do is put oil in where these bearings are, because what that does is actually makes them stick to the to the casing, and then it won't pull start or whatever. And even if oiling this, like I said, you want to use something real thin, like 3-in-1 or something. You don't want to use regular engine oil because it actually sticks and everything will bind up and everything. So that's pretty much all there is to that. And you turn around, you put your cover back on it, and your screen's gonna bolt onto it, and you notice the holes are pretty close to the edge of the cover. The edges of the bolts actually hold this cover in place. And that's pretty much all there is to that style starter. All right, so we're on to the pull starter. That dent that was there, I actually got rid of it as best I could. I don't mind the dent, but what could actually happen is that can distort the metal. It could actually shift the top part over in order, and it's going to catch the gear wrong, and it will, help it bind up and everything. So took care of that. Anyway, this little white piece here, this is called your spool. That actually holds the string for the pull starter. Underneath of that, there's actual spring that, makes it retract. One thing I was really glad to see, if you look on the very bottom of that, you're gonna see nothing but metal. When a mower sits outside a lot and everything, that actually rusts up in there, and that will bind up the spring. So we're not gonna have that problem here. And also, it looks like somebody actually replaced the spring and the string possibly. So they both check out pretty good. You're gonna see these little tabs here. That's a factory setup from Briggs & Stratton, and that's what actually holds the spool in place. So what I like to do on these when I take them apart, we're gonna go ahead and, just because they hit that those little metal tabs, I give it a light coat of grease around there. That way it's got something to ride against. I mean, it's not going to last forever, obviously, but it seems to help. And then what I do, this little hole here, this is where your the spring clips into, and the other end actually clips onto that spool. So you just take a little bit of lubricant, and blow it inside of that hole. And this pull starter has been rebuilt. That's pretty much all there is to that. So we're gonna go ahead and put this back on and everything. Up next, we're gonna be doing a carburetor. So stay tuned. So we're down to the last piece of the puzzle here. It's time to pull this carburetor apart. This is actually this carburetor itself is actually plastic. This is the last of them before that they actually came out a few years later with the ones with the primer bulb on them. This carburetor, I believe, is called a Pulsar Jet, and I'm gonna actually show you why in just a minute here. Like I said, it's the last of them. But one area I have a concern right here. If you notice, that throttle plate's got all sorts of slop to it. Where the carburetor is plastic, some of them actually have a metal bushing in there that does wear out, and you can actually replace a bushing. But I actually know another fix for that also. But anyway, for right now, I'm gonna have to leave it because I don't have any of the stuff to do it. I have some of the stuff apart already, but I just wanted to show you. This is a little doodad that runs your choke, and this little rod comes up from the diaphragm and everything that runs that, and then all of this goes over in the thing. So we can actually adjust this carburetor. This is the last of them where you can do that. The primer carburetors don't have that setting on it. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and pop this carburetor off of the tank and see what it looks like inside. So I'll go ahead and see if we can't. Yeah, maybe that'll do it. But it's just a few screws that hold this on. One thing that I kind of hate to take this carburetor off, because sometimes you can mess up the diaphragm, and I do not have one in stock for this. It's been several years since I've actually worked on one of these carburetors. Now, back when they were popular, I used to carry a bunch of diaphragms in stock. That way I had them. But, I mean, I don't think I've, all the years I've been in Kentucky, I don't think I've messed with one of these carburetors. They just, you know, a lot of them, you'll get them in and the gas tank's all rusty and whatnot, so you just go ahead and slam the primer carburetor on there and be done with it. But this one I wanted, since the tank is such good shape, I wanted to go ahead and give it a try. See if we can't revive it. But, like I said, in a minute here, I'll show you why they call this the pulsar jet. Alright, please come off of there in one piece. And it did. Alright. Alright, so this is your actual, it runs the choke also. But that's gonna, there's another area over here. It actually pulses back and forth, and it's going to send fuel up to your, this is the pickup tube, which is going to go right into the bottom of the jet area. The jet's actually in here, but this carburetor is made of plastic, so all the jet really is a pre-drilled hole. So, I mean, you could technically do something with it, but it's not recommended. And this diaphragm is in pretty rough shape, but I think what I do on these, this diaphragm's going to be all stiff and everything. What I do on these, I spray them down with WD-40 and let them sit for a little bit. And then, it helps to loosen them up a little bit. If I have to replace it after, it'd probably cost me like $5 for a new one, so it's not a big deal. But that's pretty much all there is to that. I gotta go ahead, this tank, as you can see, we're kind of gummed up in there. I'm gonna go ahead and finish cleaning that out real quick, and then I'll be back and we're gonna zap this thing back together. And we're back. I didn't go crazy cleaning this thing. Like I said, it's too cold outside to be playing with running water and whatnot. But what I did do, I went ahead and cleaned up this diaphragm with WD-40. I got it seems to be flexing pretty good. Sometimes they'll surprise you and work perfect, other times they won't. So it's gonna be we'll figure that out later in the video. I got the carburetor cleaned up. Main thing you want to do with these, you want to get your pickup tube, make sure there's no junk in it and everything, which I did that. I sprayed out the inside of it. Like I was saying in a previous video, the thing with these plastic carburetors is there is no rust, there is no corrosion. So, you could basically just spray them out and it'll be fine. That throttle shaft does have me worried a little bit, but where I can actually adjust this carburetor, I can actually probably pull that out of it. And if not, if it's still acting up really bad, we'll go ahead and give it the treatment later on. But anyway, this is kind of like your emulsion tube. You're gonna have, there's a little hole right here where that's gonna pick up the fuel, and then the air is gonna come in through the other side, and your adjustment screw will actually take care of that, and you can adjust your air fuel mixture on this carburetor. So I'm gonna set you down. I'm gonna go ahead and put this setup back together. I'll kind of show you how it goes, and then we're gonna put the carburetor back on the tank. So it's basically, like I said, we got this hole that's going to go in the bottom as such, kind of snaps into place. Then you have your little rubber washer, which goes in there. Then that's followed by a metal washer, which holds it in. And then you got your adjustment screw and the spring, which just goes on there like so. Go ahead and put that in there. And unless the washer falls out, maybe. There we go. That's just going to go as such. Go ahead and go in there. That little rubber gasket is one of the things that holds it in, and also the setup's basically made so it's like one of those things you put in a wall where the it actually expands a little bit as the threads go in. So now, all right, so I got this thing set. You know, you want to tighten them up fairly tight. You don't want to go crazy cranking them. But what I'm going to do on this screw, I'm going to go ahead and go 2.5 turns out. All right, it's 2.5. That's going to give you your base setting for this carburetor. Once the engine's running, I'm going to have to adjust that out a little more and a little more depending on whatever goes on with it. But now you got your rod sticking up here through, that's the one that I was saying goes to the choke. So you go ahead and put that on as such. So I got the diaphragm and the carburetor are actually mated to the gas tank now. You want to get a couple screws started in order to get that diaphragm seated. Like I said, this one I don't have a lot of faith in it, but it could surprise me. It's nothing that's not happened before. I've had other ones that you know, they seem like they were pretty well shot and they ended up working perfect. I've had other ones that looked really good and ended up not working at all because they had a tear in them, whatever else. So, you know, in this game here, you can't let anything really surprise you. You notice I'm not tightening any of these bolts yet. There's a reason for that. All right. So what we want to do here, as I said, this diaphragm is spring loaded. So what you want to do is you're going to hold your choke open while you tighten up the screws, because what that's called is a preload on your diaphragm. And that's what actually will make it kind of stretches it a little bit as you are tightening the carburetor bolts. So it will actually shut the choke again later on. So you basically want to hold that thing open and then just crank them down just a little bit. There we go. And as you see, the choke is working as it's supposed to. That spring's actually shutting it the way it should. I'm going to go ahead and put the little plate back on there to cover up the choke setting and we are probably good to go here. You know, if this carburetor works good, it'll kind of, I'm gonna admit, it will be kind of a miracle. But, you know, stranger things have been known to happen too, so. Probably put my ratchet on tight, that probably helps, matters a lot. Alright, so there you have it. That's pretty much what there is involved with the old Pulse-Jet carburetor. I'm going to go ahead and slap this thing back on a mower in a minute. I got a couple little other things I got to do to it. And then we're going to fire this thing off. Right now the mower is sitting on the ground. I actually, I have the blade off of it. I have it sitting on a pan so I can go ahead and I'm draining the oil out of it right now. We're gonna give it some fresh oil for initial startup, and so we'll be back in a minute. Yeah, all right, so we got the carburetor set back in place. Give me a quick thing to show you how this governor actually works. So right now we got this thing set on wide open throttle. You're gonna notice, unfortunately this spring has been tampered with, so it's not gonna give me an exact reading, but you'll notice there's some tension against that spring. Then when you go ahead and put it lower, you notice there's less tension against it. And that's actually full shut off, so that wouldn't matter anyway. One thing I just wanted to point out on this thing, like I said, due to the cold weather and everything, I hadn't cleaned it up as good as I normally would, but this mower's got like the grunge look to it. And I'm kind of liking this. It really still looks like a 41-year-old lawnmower, except for the fact that, you know, we know all the crucial areas have been cleaned up and it's doing all right. One area I really wanted to point out, and I forgot to do that in a previous video, this mower holds its original throttle. Well, I don't know if it's original to this mower, but it is a very old throttle. And this throttle was stuck when I first got to it. The throttle right now is in shut off position. And if you were to push it, the cable is actually up all the way. And when I first tried it, it wouldn't budge. So now this doesn't hold just for push mowers. It's going to go for riding mowers also, which still have throttles. You got your cable end here. What you would want to do, as I said, this throttle is, you know, back all the way, so you're going to have some cable extended. You're going to go ahead and spray some lubricant in there. Then go to this end. You're going to head and grab this end here with a pair of pliers and actually pull it. There's going to be rust on both ends, you know, on an older mower like this. And that's what's going to actually fix it. You turn around, you pull this end out with a pair of pliers. After you'd sprayed that other end, then you clean this end up a little bit with some sandpaper or whatnot. And then you turn around and you go back up here and you pull it back. And what happens is you end up having an actually excellent working throttle. I don't think this throttle is original to this mower, but I know for a fact it's very old. And if not done the right way, it would have bound up and that would have been the end of it. So now we have an excellent working throttle here. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and zap this pull cover on here, and we're gonna call this one done. You notice we got the magnetron coil on here. It's a newer coil that not really something I would normally use on this engine, but it's what I got at the moment. So anyway, next up we're gonna have this thing out in the driveway, and we're gonna fire it up. So, alright, so now we're out in the testing area, aka driveway. I went ahead and I have the ignition shut off right now, but I went ahead and pulled it a couple times to get some oil circulating, and also I want to see if it'll start pulling some vacuum for the carburetor. So we're going to go ahead and see if this old thing's going to fire up for us. As you can see, it does run, but unfortunately we have an issue. This engine does have a rod knock. I kind of thought it might have when I was taking it apart. I noticed a little play when I was wiggling the flywheel. I noticed some junk in the oil and everything. Now normally in this case, what I would do with this mower, I would turn around, pull some pieces off of it, and send the rest to scrap. We're not going to do that with this one. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and put a new connecting rod in it. It'll probably be a few weeks out, but I actually have plans to use this mower up at the farm, so we're going to do that. So, you know, as far as these revivals go, that it could go either way. You never know what's going to happen. But the good part is, as you saw, the thing is definitely pulling good vacuum for the carburetor. You know, all systems go as far as that goes. So stick around for a, I don't know, like I said, a few weeks out, and we'll go ahead and get this thing in again and get it going. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll be talking to you on the next one.